If Otome game developers were a family, Ruby Party would be the mother everyone loves and respects, even though her interests lie elsewhere nowadays. Otomate is the public face of the family, the young, ambitious businesswoman everyone encounters when dabbling in the genre for the first time. And then there's Rejet, the rebellious, misunderstood younger sibling who keeps to herself, even though she is such an iconic legacy that you need to know about. Look, I know this analogy is kinda cringe, but the story of Rejet is very much not cringe. It's interesting and controversial at the same time. If you know anything about Japanese anime culture, you've at least heard of Rejet's most famous franchise, Diabolik Lovers. Even if you don't play visual novels or video games, you will know who Rejet are. That's how iconic the company is. So today, I want to take a deep dive into this iconic Otome game developer and discuss a bit about their story, their franchises, the developers, their legacy, and the question you've surely clicked on this video for. Do Rejet truly hate the West? And if not, will we ever see their games localized down the road? Unlike many companies I discuss on this channel, Rejet have only been around for 18 years as of this video's production, but to truly understand its impact, we first need to talk about the company's founder, Daisuke Iwasaki, who's also known as Iwa-D. For ease of understanding, I will refer to him as Iwasaki throughout this video. Not much is publicly known about Iwasaki's life before he joined the games industry. Born in March 1976, he studied abroad in the United States before later working as a teacher. Now, he got his Iwa-D nickname because he's credited as a lyricist, producer, game creator, and businessman, according to his Japanese Wikipedia page. And there's a lot of labels for a guy we know literally nothing about otherwise. As part of Iwasaki's career change, he began employment at a company you might have heard of, HuneX. HuneX is mostly known outside Japan for developing Steam Prison, as well as localizing multilingual visual releases for Switch and PC via their subsidiary Dramatic Create. If you collect Japanese physical visual novels for the Switch, you probably own one of their games. HuneX has also worked on a ton of other stuff with its own long-running history, with Iwasaki forming a big part of that legacy too. HuneX's early works include Otome games Storm Lover Kai and Koi Kakume Love Revo. Both these games have full English patches, by the way, alongside the First Kiss Story franchise of Bishojo games. Many of HuneX's early releases are actually Bishojo games, not Otome games typically associated with the company today. They're very similar to Broccoli in this regard, and fun fact, one of Broccoli's older Bishojo games, Galaxy Angel, also has a full English fan translation patch. At this point, I also need to introduce another person, Hirotaka Maeda. Maeda had already established a career as a freelance illustrator throughout the 2000s. He had worked with various companies including Enix and Tecmo. If you're a JRPG fan, you've probably heard of the Deception series. Maeda illustrated the games for the Deception series, starting with the second title on the PlayStation 2. So if you've played one of those titles, you've already played a game Maeda worked on. Most relevant to this video though is how Maeda and Iwasaki met. Maeda wasn't sure whether to pursue a career in 3D CG development or 2D illustrations. At the time, the majority of his work was in 3D illustrations. This is when Iwasaki saw Maeda's drawings in his online GameX portfolio. Iwasaki reached out to Maeda and offered him a job. This job marked a turning point, not just for Maeda's career, but also Iwasaki's too. This job was for a character illustrator for an in-development Otome game. Little did both men know that this title would later go on to become a big hit. In a 2015 interview, Maeda reflects on this meeting. When Iwasaki reached out to Maeda, he didn't mention that this project was an Otome game. Maeda believed the job was for an upcoming Bishojo game thanks to his research. Only once Maeda met Iwasaki did he discover that he was being asked to work on an Otome game. But Maeda was so impressed by Iwasaki's passion for the project, he agreed to the job. He said he'd never seen someone with so much passion and enthusiasm for a project in an easy to understand way. So what exactly was this mystery game? It was the first game in what would become one of HuneX's and publisher D3's most well-known franchises, Vitamin X. Vitamin X tells the story of Minami Yuri, a second-year student at Seitai Gakuen, an elite private academy in Tokyo. Unfortunately for her, she's placed in Class X, known for its infamous students. Minami's mission is to reach out to these students and get them into college. It's a simple premise, but became an unexpectedly big hit for all involved, with Maeda reflecting that Vitamin X's success led him to feel what it's like when a title he works on sells. D3 Publisher took on publishing duties for Vitamin X and released a game for the PlayStation 2 exclusively in Japan in 2007. Fortunately, Vitamin X became so popular it spawned DS, PSP, and even 3DS ports. Additionally, various sequels and fan discs were also greenlit, such as Vitamin Y, Z, and R. Even now, Vitamin X is still looked back on fondly by the Japanese Otome game community, and even is of interest to the English-speaking world as well, even though there are no patches or translations for these games. Vitamin X's success deeply impacted both Iwasaki and Maeda, who became long-term collaborators and co-founders of Rejet. Yep, the illustrator for the Deception series would go on to found Rejet. It's a very small world indeed. Iwasaki and Maeda co-founded Rejet on the 5th of June 2009, with Iwasaki becoming president of Rejet from that day on. So now I've briefly outlined Rejet's founding, let's touch briefly on how they operate before we move on to discussing their franchises. Based in the Minato area of Tokyo, they're quite a small company, with 41 employees as of March 2020. This lean management structure is quite common for smaller Japanese game developers, regardless of their cultural impact, but doubly so if they're independent. Falcom, another similarly iconic JRPG developer, has 65 employees as of 2023. Much like Falcom, Rejet also operates multiple income streams to supplement its game development. This includes the official Rejet Skit Dolls store for merchandise, 3 in-person Rejet stores scattered across Japan, an in-person Rejet festival, a drama CD label, a book publishing line, and so much more, all aimed at women. Other Otome game developers have similar streams, such as Otomate's biannual Otomate party events. Gematsu cover those events, probably heard of them that way if you're outside of Japan. Rejet also has a company mascot, Bear D, voiced by Tomokazu Sugita. Sugita has a long line of voice acting roles in gaming and anime. His roles include Gyome Himejima from Demon Slayer and Chrome from the Fire Emblem series, to more niche roles like Keisuke from Tegeno no Chi, Ron Muraboshi from Lorne 9, and the biggest pervert in gaming, Otome from 7 Pirates, because of course he did. Speaking of various franchises, we now need to touch on Rejet's most well-known franchises. If you're an Otome fan, you will already know what these are. I won't go over everything because there are simply too many, but I will only stick to the most noteworthy titles while introducing some key staff, so things like Diabolik Lovers, but also some of the niche stuff as well. Because like a lot of visual novel developers, Rejet has a bunch of returning collaborators that have become synonymous with the company, not just Maeda. I'm going to start with Rejet's first title, Lucian B's Resurrection Supernova. Originally debuting on the PlayStation 2 in 2009 before getting a PSP port in 2010, Lucian B's is a collaboration between Rejet and Iwasaki's former employer, HuneX. In this game, you play as Anna, a high school student who's invited to work with a mysterious organisation called Lucian B's, hence the game's name. This organisation tasks her with a mission. You must change uncool guys in the world plan. That's not just for show, the love interests are from countries all around the world, ranging from the UK to Italy, and of course, glorious Nippon. This unique diversity in allies somewhat reflects Iwasaki's international experience. Additionally, Maeda designed and illustrated the game's characters, cementing his legacy with Rejet right from the get-go. Although interestingly enough, he didn't design the shibis. That honour went to an illustrator named Guli who worked on many Japanese exclusive titles throughout the 2010s. And don't worry if you've not heard of them, I certainly didn't before making this video. Going back to Resurrection Supernova, the game did well enough to spawn 2 short fan discs, also for the PS2 and PSP. They are Evil Violet, which focuses on the Honey Buzzard 6 guys, and Justice Yellow, which focuses on the Metropolis 5 guys. While I imagine this title has its fans and did well enough on its own terms, Lucian B's didn't really leave a long-term mark, and still remains trapped on legacy consoles. But given this is the first Rejet title ever made, I had to include it here. After all, we've all got to start somewhere, and in the case of Rejet, that means making a visual where you date sexy guys from all around the world, which is ironically completely unheard of around the world, at least until this video. Most critically though, Lucian B's establishes music as a core theme, something else that becomes synonymous with Rejet, especially in future iconic games. You all knew it was coming. We are now moving on to the big daddy of Rejet's library. The franchise that even if you hate visual novels, you will almost certainly know that this franchise exists. It's a franchise that's synonymous with Rejet, and it's the biggest franchise for an Otome game series that has no official English localization, and is also controversial for several reasons. And yes, we'll get to that as well. It's time to discuss Diabolik Lovers. And I'm going to say this up front, I am not a fan of Diabolik Lovers, like, at all. I have attempted to play through the English patch for Haunted Dark Bridal, but I had to drop it for reasons that I will explain later. But I will try my best to be as impartial as possible when it comes to discussing this franchise. Regardless of what you personally think about Diabolik Lovers, it has a story well worth telling. Diabolik Lovers, here referred to as Dia Lovers, is a multimedia franchise that Rejet operate in conjunction with Idea Factory and their Otomate brand. At this point, Idea Factory had established a presence in Japan and began collaborations with third parties for all new visual novel and RPG projects. While Dia Lovers isn't their first collaboration with Otomate, that honour goes to Renai, Bancho, Inochi, Mijikashi, Kaiso, Otome, Love is Power. Dia Lovers is their most well-known collaboration and biggest moneymaker, even to this day. Now's a good time to introduce another key staffer who would work with Rejet on several games, Yamada Yumi. Yumi is a scenario writer for Polkadot, a company specialising in Otome game scenarios. Companies like Polkadot are nothing unusual in Japan. It's perfectly normal for creatives to band together with companies like Polkadot to offer their services, not just for visual novels, but for anime more generally. Yumi has worked on over 30 VNs. Most of them are Japanese exclusive, but some of them are available in English, such as Amnesia Later, the often forgotten Sweet Fuse, and the non-Otome game Corpse Party Book of Shadows. In Rejet's case though, Yumi is most known for writing most of the Diabolik Lovers games. The first title, Diabolik Lovers Haunted Dark Bridal, originally released for the PSP in October 2012. This classic Otome game is where the franchise began, and would kickstart Rejet's popularity and notoriety, depending on who you ask. In this game, you play as Yui Komori, a high school student who moves into the Sakimaki estate, where 6 brothers live. Despite Yui's uneasy feelings, she tries her best to adjust to her new life with these 6 vampire bros. But Yui becomes a captive for these vampire bros and descends into deep feelings of madness and ecstasy. Haunted Dark Bridal is a very dark game that knows exactly how morally questionable it is up front and doesn't hesitate to tell you about it. There's lots of dark, non-consensual content that pushes the boundaries to what's considered acceptable in quote-unquote consumer titles. That's the Japanese word for console games, so things like the PSP and the Switch. Yet, it is this dark, triggering nature that is why Dia Lovers became a huge success. There's a subsection of Otome game fans who do enjoy blatantly abusive and toxic relationships within fiction. This isn't surprising given the more mainstream works featuring similarly dark content, such as 50 Shades of Grey. But for visual novels specifically, toxic romance within Otome games is a market that has historically been underserved, both within and outside of Japan, with many other established Otome game developers shying away from this untapped audience. Rejet is one of, if not the first, Otome game developer to specifically target this audience. Dia Lovers was the game where it finally paid off. Dia Lovers' huge popularity in Japan led Rejet and Idea Factory to greenlight an anime adaptation of Haunted Dark Bridal that was licensed for the English-speaking market for the fall 2013 anime season. A lot of Otome fans online remark about how controversial this anime adaptation was in the West, and one look at the My Anime list page gives you a bit of idea. Now, I will add that anime adaptations of visual novels in general do tend to be inferior to the original. Outside of Clannad, Steins Gate, and Fate's Stay Night, very few anime adaptations are held in high regard by the visual novel community, and nowhere is this more apparent than in Otome games. Some of the most popular Otome game IPs became more popular outside of Japan thanks to their anime adaptations, ranging from Utano Prince Sama to Harukaneru Toki no Nakade. Hence, people started clamouring for localizations. However, this awareness does have a double-edged sword, and nowhere is this more apparent than Diabolik Lovers. Now, I wasn't around in visual novel anime community specifically back in 2013, but to ensure I know what I'm talking about, I subjected myself to the first few episodes of the anime. It was quite an experience, let's just say. I didn't need my sick bucket, but I still didn't want to watch it all. So I'm just going to extract some quotes from reviews from My Anime list, which I think speak for themselves. Diabolik Lovers is the perfect example of how not to adapt a shoujo anime based on a game. The show's sadism and vampire rap tones is almost an insult to viewers itself. The female protagonist in here is just so stupid. I yell WTF at least 6 times an episode and have to resist the urge to beat the she out of the characters at least 7. This girl has no personality, and there's no character development at all. She's a walking blood bank. She's a self-degrading, masochistic, idiotic, helpless, useless, vulnerable, terrible main character that gets borderline rapped every so often. You know those useless girl characters that go Kya! Well, for fuck's sake. Well, here you go. The guys aren't even worth mentioning. Those hot, sadistic, mature males in all other animes are not here. Here lies a bunch of cocky-ass jerkwads. Need I say more? Which group of viewers is this anime targeted for? I have no fucking idea. This fucking reverse harem shit just makes guys like me want to punch a fucking hole in my screen. I don't think girls would find joy in watching other girls getting assaulted, name-called, attacked by douchebags in every fucking minute of this anime either. I'm surprised feminists haven't shoved the creators of this anime in a deep pile of gender equality shit yet. As you can probably tell by some of the themes I quoted in these comments, Diabolik Lovers has a largely negative reception. There were some positive reviews though, so for the sake of balance, I will quote a positive review that I believe sums up the views of a lot of Dia Lovers fans. Let me just state for the record that this is without a doubt the most misogynistic and abominable thing I've ever watched, standing alongside the likes of Itazura and Kiss. Make no mistake, this show is among the absolute worst that humanity has to offer, and yet, it's just so entertaining. I'm not even going to go as far as to call it a guilty pleasure, because for it to be a guilty pleasure, I'd have to be ashamed of liking it in the first place. I can safely say that I'm not ashamed to admit I like this abomination that was churned out from the bowels of production IG alongside Abunai Sisters. This program can definitely be referred to as the room of anime. So despite its mixed reception, Dia Lovers ballooned into a massive franchise with lots of merchandise, events, and of course fan discs. The following fan discs all came out for the PSP, Vita, and Nintendo Switch throughout the 2010s, which depends on the original release date. This franchise has so many fan discs and other multimedia stuff that it would deserve its own video to go through it all, so thanks for understanding that I'm only going to do an abridged summary here. The most well-known fan disc is the first one, More Blood. In this title, Yuri is stuck at the centre of a power struggle between two vampire clans, the Sakimaki clan from Haunted Dark Bridal, as well as the brand new Mukami clan. And there's Dark Fate, which introduces the Tsukunai brothers who transferred back to Japan from the UK, very fitting given the country's uncontroversially an actual cesspool in real life. Dark Fate also received a fan disc of its own, titled Lunatic Parade. The vampires travel to the Dream World in order to rescue Yuri's heart, which was stolen. And of course, there's a parade. The direct sequel to Dark Fate, Lost Eden, revolves around a mysterious curse that's killing vampires, leading to further distrust and suspicion among the three clans. Then we finally get to the most recent game, Chaos Lineage, which adapts the drama CD series of the same name into a game. Socrates takes Yuri and all the vampires into a new world, wipes their memories, and stages a fight to the death. The three clans are all divided into new teams to decide who will become the supreme ruler in place of Karl Heinz, another major character in the franchise. From what I've read online, the Diabolik Lovers fandom generally considers Haunted Dark Bridal, More Blood, and Chaos Lineage to be the truly essential titles, while everything else is considered more optional extras stroke deep cuts for fans of the franchise. If you've played the games extensively, let me know your recommended playing order down in the comments below. So, what about Dia Lovers and the chances of an official Western release? Well, I will discuss this later because all these dark triggering themes will be a recurring theme of Rejet games, so for the meantime we're just going to wrap up Dia Lovers specifically. Regardless of what you think of Dia Lovers, it's safe to say the franchise is known worldwide, and arguably has one of the most dedicated and vocal fan bases across the entire visual medium and across Otome games and anime related to it, period. This franchise almost single-handedly put Rejet on the map and helped secure the company's future, even more so than any of Iwasaki's works up to that point. And as of 2025, Dia Lovers continues to receive new merchandise from Rejet, which speaks volumes to this franchise legacy. Moreover, Otomate also benefited from their partnership with Rejet on Diabolik Lovers, as the growth of Dia Lovers also spurred growth for the Otomate brand. Moving on to Rejet's second most well-known franchise, Black Wolves Saga, also known as the Game of Thrones of Otome. The world of Black Wolves Saga centres around a core conflict between humans, wolves and cats throughout the kingdom of Weblin. For hundreds of years, the three races lived in harmony throughout the kingdom, However, decades before the events of Black Wolves Saga, the cats and other races began exploiting each other, raising tensions. This culminated in a full-on rebellion where the wolves, who enjoyed a comfortable position as the royal family's bodyguards, pointed their blades at them. Additionally, a virus outbreak known as Zodiva or Mad Wolf Disease began around the same time, which many people began to blame on the wolves. The fallout of this was a literal genocide ordered on the wolves by the royal family. This story sounds strangely similar to the average Tales game, by the way. Black Wolves Saga is also known as the Game of Thrones of Otome for a reason. It has all the trigger warnings to match, including blood and torture, almost on par with Diabolik Lovers. Black Wolves Saga is split into two titles, Bloody Nightmare and Last Hope, that tell the story from the humans' and wolves' perspectives, respectively. Both titles have the same beginning and protagonist. You play as Fiona, a sickly young woman who lives in a tower to protect her health. Although thanks to her isolated lifestyle, many people believe that she's a witch. The Prince of Weblin, Miyoyo, wishes to take Fiona as his bride, but Fiona's father says no. That is a threat not only to Fiona, but to the whole kingdom as well. The plotline splits early on in the story, depending on which version of the game you play. In Bloody Nightmare, Miyoyo and his brother Rejet use the witch rumours to arrest Fiona and observe her in the castle. However, Fiona soon breaks out of the castle with a half-brother Zezo and butler Nera, and goes on the run to escape Weblin. In Last Hope, Rathvogart, one of the more influential wolves in the all-but-confirmed canon love interest, breaks Fiona out of the tower instead. The Black Wolves Saga visual novels have an interesting release history. Rejet originally released Bloody Nightmare on PC themselves, physically and digitally, on the 26th of April 2012. Last Hope was originally developed for the PSP, with Idea Factory and Otomate publishing that version on the 20th of December the same year. Both games were combined into one Vita release, Vibe and Schwartz, which came out in Japan on the 26th of January 2017. This Vita port is widely considered to be the definitive way to experience Black Wolves Saga as a bundle pack alongside a new short story. One of the other notable aspects of Black Wolves Saga is that it's the most well-known work of its character illustrator, Kuriyuki. Kuriyuki's illustrations are immediately distinctive for their vibrant colour palette. They're a popular illustrator and are still active to this day, albeit not in the world of visual novels. In the West, Kuriyuki is also known for illustrating the often forgotten Period Cube Shackles of Amadeus, one of two remaining PS Vita exclusive Otome games. So if you recognise this art style, that's why. Also, fun little side note, Black Wolves Saga was not Kuriyuki's first Otome game collaboration. That honour goes to Geka Rairan Romance, another forgotten collaboration title between Rejet and Otomate in 2011. Both these previously mentioned titles have been dwarfed by Black Wolves Saga, which is widely considered one of Rejet's most popular IPs, second only to Diabolik Lovers. It's still beloved to this day, both inside and outside of Japan. One reason why is all the merchandise Rejet have released for the game in the years since, ensuring new fans continue to discover this lost classic. The aforementioned Game of Thrones of Otome comparison also helps, because Black Wolves Saga is a plot-heavy series, given all its world building and political intrigue. Even if you're not into Otome games, you may still enjoy exploring this world, especially because Black Wolves Saga doesn't fumble its ending, unlike Game of Thrones. This is partly why I tried out Black Wolves Saga Bloody Nightmare some time ago and enjoyed it, but I sadly wasn't able to play all the routes before my hacked Vita corrupted, but I do want to go back and reread the game, because I absolutely loved it. Another key part of Black Wolves Saga's legacy is that the Rejet brand began to become synonymous with dark, messed up content, especially within Otome games. This label is something usually associated with Bishoujo game and BL developers, such as Nitro Plus and Clock Up, who mostly operate in the world of adult games. When you think of classic Otome games by Rejet, you think of Black Wolves Saga and Diabolik Lovers, their two oldest franchises that cemented them on the radar of Otome game fans. I could end this portion of the video here and people would be happy because I've essentially discussed all their major titles, but that's not what I'm about here. Let's touch a bit more on some of their newer projects that retain the same level of charm and quality. Kenga Kimi is a historical plot game set in the Edo period. In this world, you play as Kayo, a teenage girl who lives in a tea house with her father. One day, the princess of Sampu Castellan asks her to take her place in a marriage promenade. Kayo is literally playing the role of the princess. Kayo departs to Sampu with 6 bodyguards, all sexy, handsome samurai, because of course they are. On the way, Kayo and the samurai get caught up in various fantasy hijinks, including a dark ritual involving the sword-retrieving imperial match as well as yokai. It's comparable to the likes of Hakuoki, Birushana and Nightshade from other developers. Kenga Kimi's OPs were composed by Yasunori Mitsuda, known for his work in the world of Japanese IPs. He also worked on Black Wolves Saga's opening too, by the way. Other composers at Mitsuda's music composition company, Procyon Studio, produced the rest of the game's soundtrack. Characters and CGs were drawn by Yomi, best known in the West for their later work on Virtually Evermore with Idea Factory. In terms of who wrote Kenga Kimi, 8 scenario writers all share credits for writing Kenga Kimi, both main writers and sub-writers. Some familiar names, like Ryuka Yoshimura and Yamada Yumi, return, but other writers such as Sahara Yuki, who wrote Correx Malice, and Sei Ryuko, who's known mostly for Dominus 15, Period Cube, as well as Trillion God of Destruction, also played a role. Kenga Kimi is a very plot-heavy visual novel, with a long con route, a complex story, and epic battle scenes, not to mention memorable character development to boot. Otome fans who've played Kenga Kimi rate it very highly. That's because not only is Kenga Kimi a fantastic game on its own merits, but the plot-heavy nature of this game and similarities to Hakuoki make Kenga Kimi an ideal entry point for Rejet's works. The tropes typically associated with Rejet's works, while still present here, are somewhat diluted thanks to the overall story. Therefore, even if players don't like toxic love interests, they may be able to overlook it because the overall plot is fantastic and gripping. Essentially, people like me and many other Otome and wider visual novel fans. Kenga Kimi would later go on to become a core pillar within Rejet's library, becoming immediately popular and critically acclaimed upon its release. Kenga Kimi originally came out for PC on the 19th of December 2013, before getting a Vita port on the 26th of March 2015. Notably, this is the first major flagship IP where Rejet fully developed and published the console ports themselves. Moreover, Rejet developed a fan disc, Momoyo Tsuzuri, which came out on the 22nd of December 2016. This fan disc contains many short stories taking place during and after the events of the original title. You need to play the first Kenga Kimi title before playing this one because it's a fan disc. Interestingly, Momoyo Tsuzuri started life as a PS Vita exclusive. Rejet never published an official PC port of the game in Japan, unlike their previous flagship works. This is just one way Rejet's business decisions shifted away from their roots in the mid-2010s. At first glance, it seems baffling, but their changing platform lineup reflects the wider visual market in general, where the Japanese PC market shrank in favour of consoles and Otome. The Otome game sphere had largely moved over to consoles by the mid-2010s. Of the largest Otome game developers, Rejet was the outlier. They are kind of like Falcom in how much they held on to the PC market for as long as possible before market reality forced their hand. Another way Rejet followed market trends is that they later brought Kenga Kimi to the Nintendo Switch in a bundle pack on June 24th, 2021. On a more personal level, Kenga Kimi is the Rejet title I'm most interested in reading that I haven't already tried to read, so I really hope one day I'm able to experience this game because it looks so awesome, and I know a lot of Otome fans in the unlocalized scene do love this game, so I'd love to give it a chance. The final, most recent flagship Rejet IP I'd like to spotlight in this video is Dance with Devils, a multimedia franchise between Rejet, Elements Garden and Avex. In this game, you play as Ritsuka Tachibana, a student at Shiko Academy. One day, Ritsuka gets attacked by mysterious men, the first of many encounters. Moreover, she returns home to find it's been ransacked and her mother is being kidnapped. Who are these men and why are they attacking her? What have they done with their mother? Well, the men are devils you can romance, hence the game's name. So why are they attacking her? Well, the reason is in the story synopsis. Ritsuka is the last key to locating the Forbidden Grimoire, a mysterious book that's central to the conflict within Dance with Devils universe. Akuma, a mysterious being, as well as Jack, the vampire, seek the Forbidden Grimoire. Lindo, an exorcist, seeks to stop Akuma and Jack. He also duels as both Ritsuka's brother and a love interest, because of course he does, as this is an Otome game. Alongside this conflict, the mysterious men tempt Ritsuka. Their temptations alter her fate. Will Ritsuka choose humans or devils? The choice is yours. As this game is an adaptation of the 2015 anime, the game broadly follows the same story. In terms of key staff, the previously mentioned Seki Ryuko helped write the scenario, with animation studio Brains Base, great name by the way, credited for the art direction. Hirotaka Maeda returned once again to design the characters, and even though Dance with Devils is a multimedia franchise worked on by multiple companies, it's clear this is a Rejet game at its heart. Dance of Devils originally launched for the PlayStation Vita on the 24th of March 2016, becoming an instant hit, and after researching this video, I can easily see why, and I'm sure you can too. Rejet would develop a fan disc for this game, titled Dance of Devils, My Carol. This fan disc consists of 4 sections. There's the All-Star section, which is a con route set before the school festival in the first game, effectively making it a mid-quel. The My Carol section is a 4-chapter after-story that follows the original game's Human 1 ending. The after-story section, yes, this is a whole separate third section, these names are a bit confusing, follows the good and bad endings from the first game, so they are effectively after-stories for every route. Finally, there's the mysterious extra section, which includes, among other things, festive Christmas dates. Perfect to play at Christmas. My Carol was also well received. Rejet later ported both Dance of Devils titles to the Nintendo Switch as download exclusives, a rare example of digital-only Nintendo Switch ports of titles that previously released physically on legacy platforms. Dance of Devils My Carol is also notable because it's the last fan disc developed by Rejet outside of the Diabolik Lovers series as of autumn 2025. It's not their last all-new title though. Rejet continued to develop new games throughout the PS Vita's life. One of these titles is Moshi Kono Sekai ni Kamisara ga Iru Tosuru Naraba, one of the darkest Otome games ever made. It's even darker than Otomate's Third Shade Evermore, and its darkness is more in line with notoriously dark PC games like Super Hibi and almost anything by ClockUp. This title came to Nintendo Switch in August 2025. The other title, Marginal 4 Road to Galaxy, is surprisingly well known in the PS Vita import community. This is an idle rhythm game that doesn't require Japanese to understand. Think along the lines of Bandori's Nintendo Switch port and Konami's Shinepost Be Your Idol for the Nintendo Switch 2. It's also one of the cheapest rhythm games available on the PS Vita. As Rejet produced more acclaimed works throughout the late 2000s and early 2010s, they became an Otome game household name. They now have a loyal fan base, multiple popular IPs, alongside multiple income streams thanks to merchandise, royalty sales, and so much more. Anime and visual fans alike outside of Japan soon took notice, as Axis Games and other companies introduced Otome games to the English-speaking world, alongside Funimation and other anime companies localizing anime adaptations for Rejet's games. Rejet titles became a staple in Manga Gamer's annual localization request survey, with Black Wolves Saga, Kenga Kimi, and of course, Diabolik Lovers topping the ranks as Otome fans made their wishes known. While localization surveys don't mean much in the grand scheme of things, after all, localization is far more complicated than just what fans want outside of Japan, they are a good indicator as to what the hardcore base want to see. Yet, despite this demand, none of Rejet's works are available in English. Instead, many of the same popular titles I just mentioned are translated by fans in their place. And yes, I'll touch on the Rejet fan translation scene later in the video, as that's a bit of a tricky subject. Regardless, the demand for Rejet's works is there and it's stable, but it may be a different story for Rejet itself. With the PlayStation Vita entering its twilight years and the Nintendo Switch coming in to replace it as a console for visual novels, Rejet was in pole position to further expand their library of new and classic IP. Yet, in a huge twist of irony, as the PS Vita entered its twilight years and faded into obscurity, Rejet seemingly went with them, at least in terms of new visual novel IP. Aside from the previously mentioned ports, Rejet have not released a single new visual novel IP. Rather, the company have now shifted to releasing drama CDs and merchandise for their existing franchises, including Diabolik Lovers. Moreover, any new IPs do not have a visual novel adaptation, instead remaining in the world of anime, manga, and most notably, drama CDs. One such example is Carnelian Blood, a drama CD IP Rejet debuted in 2020, focusing on a fictional band known as Erosion. From what I've read online, Otome fans both in and outside of Japan believe Rejet is facing financial difficulties due to the lack of new titles. With such an iconic legacy behind them, it's baffling to think that as time goes on, Rejet faces an uncertain future. As I just mentioned, Rejet hasn't released a single new video game project in years, bar Chaos Lineage with Idea Factory. They have moved over to merchandise and drama CDs, which merchandise especially is a cheap way of getting in some extra income that doesn't require anywhere near as many resources as creating a brand new game, and is also less financially risky. When it comes to situations like this, it's best to assume that, as a rule of thumb, if a company does not release any new projects for multiple years, it's a sign that they may potentially be in trouble. Just because a company has a successful track record doesn't mean they'll be able to stick around and keep making games, or even stay in certain genres. whether it's cult classic JRPG developers like Imagipok, fellow visual developers like Minori, or entire genre-defining series like Chunsoft's sound novel series, many Japanese game developers and franchises have come and gone over the years. Yet, despite all this, Rejet, they're still around. So what is going on, and could they make a comeback? First off, is there any hard evidence that Rejet are facing financial difficulties? I couldn't find anything online to explicitly confirm this theory. However, the company has continued to seek new funding opportunities. In 2018, Rejet entered a capital alliance with DMM Games, with the latter company acquiring shares and projects working with Rejet's IP. DMM Games are one of the largest storefronts for PC gaming in Japan, and increasingly has a worldwide presence thanks to collaborations like Token Rambu with Nitro Plus, Gal Metal with Marvelous Inc., Iwahime with 7th Expansion, and various localizations of Aqua Plus titles through their localization subsidiary, Shirifune. DMM Games are a massive company, and if you engage in the PC gaming sphere at all, even outside of adult titles, you will know who they are. Even Western localization companies like NIS America publish their games on DMM when they have Japanese support. Additionally, having a large shareholder can help increase financial stability and guarantee that a company sticks around. Just ask all those indie developers who accepted timed exclusivity deals for their titles on the Epic Games Store. So why have they been inactive? This likely relates to the unfortunate circumstances surrounding Daisuke himself. In a recent post on Twitter, Daisuke revealed he was hospitalised in 2023 due to heart failure and later had to undergo 2 surgeries, meaning he hasn't been able to work on new lyrics or anything creative and has been focusing on his health for a prolonged period. This is a really unfortunate set of circumstances for him, and I really hope he recovers as much as possible, even if it means he can no longer write lyrics again. Disability can affect anyone at any time, alongside medical crises, and Daisuke's unfortunate situation is a reminder of that. Now we're heading on to the part of the video I'm sure most English-speaking Otome fans have already skipped to, because we need to answer the elephant in the room. Why won't Rejet localise their games? As I already mentioned, Rejet titles have topped localization polls and have been vocally demanded by the Otome game community in the West for many years now. So it's clear there is demand. Why hasn't it happened yet? So a little crash course on the industry and localization for the younger fans especially before I continue. Given how popular Rejet are, it's almost certain that publishers made attempts behind the scenes to localize their games into English over the years, but the exact specifics are only known within localization circles by those directly involved at the time, alongside Rejet themselves for obvious reasons. But due to non-disclosure agreements that all these employees have to sign when joining these companies, and the need to maintain trust with the Japanese licensors like Rejet, these localization companies can never explicitly confirm or deny when a game is coming, unless part of a pre-approved marketing strategy. Anything I'm about to say is both speculation and educated guesses based on what I could find publicly, alongside how localizations work in general, not just in visual novels. There's a high chance if anyone from Rejet or any localization company watches this video, they're going to be like, she's actually right, or oh, she's completely off the mark, but I can't say anything. So with that out of the way, let's discuss a certain common belief many people have. They believe Rejet refuses to localize their games due to xenophobia and piracy concerns. A lot of people would often parrot this belief, assuming it's true. Apparently, Iwasaki himself confirmed this some time ago. Some people claim he confirmed this on Twitter, others say they don't know where they heard it from. However, whenever other people and I have asked in the past for a concrete source, people haven't been able to provide it, which is what always seems to happen. So I decided to investigate myself. I went through Iwasaki's personal blog, his personal Twitter, and other sources to put together my own theory, as well as to find out a bit more about what Iwasaki thinks himself and what drives him to make the work he does. And what I found was pleasantly surprising. My personal belief is not only is this xenophobia narrative hot air, but I also feel it does a strong disservice to Iwasaki, his works, and the Western Otome game community. I read through Iwasaki's entire blog for this video, and although much of it is not relevant, I do recommend you read it even if you cannot speak Japanese and need a translator app. While many of his blog posts serve as Rejet company updates, Iwasaki also touches on more serious topics, including mental health, optimism in the creative field, his love for writing lyrics, career advice for aspiring Otome game developers, mourning after natural disasters in light of the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, and many more subjects. It's genuinely fascinating looking through his blog, because you can clearly see he's much more rounded than his reputation overseas suggests, and he's surprisingly eloquent too. This is a great example of how the language barrier conceals aspects of creatives' personalities from non-native speakers. The most relevant Otome game localization blog post I found, and arguably the most interesting, was back in 2013, where Iwasaki is promoting his appearance as a special guest in the August 6th and 7th episodes of NHK's Imagination Overseas program. Imagination was NHK's long-running series which focuses on covering Japanese anime, manga, and gaming media. This ranged from the mainstream stuff like Dragon Ball and Toho, alongside interviews with iconic creatives like Makoto Shinkai, but surprisingly they even did niche obscure stuff such as a full episode on Shin Megami Tensei 4 when that first came out for the 3DS. Unfortunately, NHK cancelled Imagination in March 2020, ensuring most of its episodes are now lost media, and although you can find some things on the Wayback Machine and their Facebook page, Daisuke Iwasaki's episode is not among them. Therefore, I can't say too much about the interview aside from what Iwasaki has already said, so I'm going to have to keep this brief. But if somebody does have a link to the full episode, please post it down in the comments below. First of all, in line with NHK's series, this interview was conducted in English. Daisuke, as part of a roundtable with other creatives including Hirotaka Maeda, is asked about whether content aimed at women will ever get localized overseas. Iwasaki wonders how difficult this would be due to the many cultural differences involved, but he is interested in responses from overseas fans, which is notable given that Rejet already has a fanbase in Chinese-speaking regions, and this specific blog post encouraged international fans to check out the episode. Speaking of his fans, in a 2013 blog post, Iwasaki answers a common question he's often asked: why is he, a man, working on games for women? In response, he says he loves writing stories centering around male characters and loves working to make women happy, which is most apparent at events. His blog has not been updated since 2015, however, because much of his focus since moved over to Twitter, which calls itself X nowadays. Some of his tweets are even written in English, showing he's well aware of Rejet's international audience and willingness to communicate with fans. When you consider all these comments, it's inconsistent with somebody who supposedly hates the West and doesn't want to see his titles localized into English. If Iwasaki really did express these comments back in the early 2010s, his views changed over time. Remember, Iwasaki speaks English, and he's had extensive experience travelling abroad, including in the United States. He's well able to understand what English speakers are telling him online, including this video if he ever came around to watching it. Oh, and the off chance you're watching this, Iwasaki, hi, hello, thanks for watching, please support the channel too. Anyway, let's move on. Iwasaki is not alone in expressing concerns regarding whether Otome games, yet alone darker titles like those he's worked on, are viable for localization. First of all, because Rejet do not work on adult content, we can remove the issues that will cause from the equation completely. However, there are cultural, socio-economic, legal and political factors to consider, even when it relates to all ages games, which is what these games would be called, even though that's a really awful title. One piece of evidence often cited are answers given by Axie's game staff in a 2019 Momocon panel. When asked about how Axies choose games to localize, one part of their answer relates to evaluating darker content. Their answers are as follows.
It's important to know if there's some weird twist somewhere in the end that ESRB might be like, no, that's not, we can't bring that over to the United States. So, and there's several games, a lot of games where you're like, oh, that ended really, really weird. Lots of like stuff you just don't want to read.
Yeah, there's a few things where we were really hyped on a game until we hit the point, as it were, and it's like, nope, this is not going to work. I mean, either the ESRB or the FBI are going to be knocking on a door asking for answers. Yeah, do keep in mind also with Otome, because it does go into the dark side quite a bit. You guys are probably familiar with other series that, while we might like them, there might be a market for them. It's at that point it goes beyond just ESRB and the gaming industry at that point. So it's something we do have to tread lightly. So that also influences some of the games we decide to do.
While Diabolik Lovers, Black Wolves Saga, nor any other Rejet titles were directly named, fans interpreted Axie's comments to be an indirect confirmation that they will not license Rejet titles, especially thanks to Rejet's popularity and their connection to Idea Factory, who Axie's almost exclusively worked with to localize Otome games back then. However, whether the Axis game staff back then truly were thinking of Diabolik Lovers or Black Wolves Saga doesn't really matter. The same challenges would apply to localizing dark Otome games in general, yet alone Rejet stuff. Another major cultural factor worth discussing is the Yamato Nadeshiko trope, which is a common feature found in Otome games. In a 2023 CBR article, the meaning of Yamato Nadeshiko is defined as follows. The ideal Japanese woman embodies Neo-Confucian ideology. A woman should be submissive and docile in front of authority, but still showcase her charm and feminine beauty to others. Now, I want to make something very clear here. The Yamato Nadeshiko trope is not innately harmful or problematic by itself. It's on par with things like tsundere, dandere, and similar tropes in anime media. But much like any other trope, the context it's used can change how a work is received dramatically. The Yamato Nadeshiko trope is found within some of Rejet's works, including Diabolik Lovers. This partially explains the negative feedback regarding Yui in the anime I mentioned earlier. This is not something that resonates well with many Westerners, including many Otome fans themselves. This is why protagonists without this trope tend to be better received outside of Japan, such as Lynette Mira from Cupid Parasite. When you combine the presence of the Yamato Nadeshiko trope alongside the dark, abusive content, it's not surprising that any company would find it difficult to justify localizing Rejet titles. And this is all before touching on various other issues like the extortionate voice acting fees for Otome game voice actors and how all platforms, but especially Nintendo and Valve, have inconsistent approval policies that will kill a vision or reach if any platform rejects them. This is something that's particularly noteworthy following recent events in 2025. Localization is extremely complex, and there's no guarantee that you'll be able to make a financial return. This leads to a lot of Otome game developers and publishers becoming quite risk averse. This is something we've seen with Ruby Party as well, which I talked about in a video some time ago. Yet, I firmly believe that despite these challenges, Rejet's localization era, especially outside of Asia, has only truly just begun. First off, let's touch on the fact the Otome game market itself has grown a lot in recent years, primarily in Asia. Pretty much every major visual developer are licensing out their games for worldwide release in some form. In Rejet's case, multiple titles, including Kenga Kimi and incredibly Diabolik Lovers, are now officially available in Chinese across Nintendo Switch and PC. Rejet's localization partner is HuneX, more commonly known as Joyoland. They've been working with Rejet for many years now, and are now even working with them for simultaneous worldwide releases of Switch ports as of August 2025. Joyoland, alongside Justan and GameSource Entertainment, are leading the charge in localizing Japanese Otome games into Chinese, including from the likes of Idea Factory. Joyoland's legacy goes way beyond Rejet too. They developed the first PC ports for the Legend of Heroes cross-build games, which were used as the basis for the Geofront English fan translations for those games. So if you're a JRPG fan and you're wondering how Geofront got those games into English, you can thank Joyoland for that. Shoehorned Trails reference aside, Rejet, alongside other notable labels like Ruby Party and Otomate, are focusing primarily on the Chinese market because that's where a lot of the money is. The Western market is in comparison an afterthought, but it's also growing rapidly, just at a slower pace. Many other companies are licensing out their titles to the West, including titles with controversial content. This ranges from Prototype and HuneX localizing console ports of adult Otome games like Benny Banner and Butterfly's Poison, albeit without the adult content, to Broccoli localizing the dark, mature plot game Illusion of Hitahari. Even Axis games themselves have localized more recent works, most notably the previously mentioned Illusion of Hitahari, but also Virtually Evermore Era Salvation from Otomate in 2023. This shows that their stance has somewhat changed since the 2019 MomoCon panel. So what about that initial theory in the first place, that Rejet hates the West? As I said, I believe it's bollocks based on the evidence we have publicly. So why does this theory exist? It's most likely because of the lack of official public comments. As mentioned earlier, localization staff are contractually bound by non-disclosure agreements, so they can't say anything publicly about this stuff, and this only leaves Rejet. And frankly, they don't need to say anything. Sometimes silence is your answer. And also, what would it achieve? The only justification really is that it could fill an information gap that's ripe for rumours be peddled as facts. To elaborate a bit more, let me briefly give a detour to the world of Japanese RPGs. The The most famous example is Atlus and the Persona series, where many fans claimed that mainline Persona is exclusive to PlayStation due to an exclusivity deal Atlus signed with Sony. This was never publicly confirmed, but fans acted as if it was, complete with blatantly misogynistic memes aimed at those pointing this out. Ask me how I know. Bitterness aside, only once the Persona series finally went multi-platform, fans finally stopped speculating. If Sony and Atlus had a business deal, it's long since expired, and the evidence never entered the public domain. A current similar example relates to Nihon Falcom's titles localized by Xseed Games. Fans claim that Xseed Games owns exclusive rights to the Falcom titles they localized for the English market in the early to mid 2010s, including the original Trails in the Sky trilogy and Cold Steel 1 and 2. Moreover, fans claim Xseed Games are the reason these games haven't appeared on modern platforms, but there is no evidence for this, nor any understanding of how complex licensing can be. Neither Falcom nor Xseed have ever publicly commented on what's going on, providing the perfect dearth of information required for fan theories to spread. These fan theories regarding licensing and exclusivity deals remain popular, despite former Xseed staffer Tom Lipschultz confirming in early 2025 that Falcom owned the scripts to their games that Xseed localized. Similar situations to the above apply to Rejet. There are no public comments or explanations available, so fans fill the gap. It's perfectly reasonable to speculate on what you believe is going on. Heck, I do it all the time with the fan translation series. It's also reasonable to be curious. But it's not okay to go around claiming that these fan theories are confirmed when there's no evidence of this. Moreover, third-party companies coming out and making public comments won't change anything. Well, publicly anyway. Rather, these third parties will burn bridges with Rejet and other licensors. Therefore, their speaking out is a net negative. This is especially relevant to companies that lack an official Western presence to begin with and would be wary about localizing their works. Yes, staff at these companies will almost certainly know what's going on behind the scenes. It sucks they can't go public about it, but remaining silent is the right thing to do instead of putting their jobs and relationships at risk. But one thing I can confidently say is that speculation does nobody any good when passionate creators who care for their fanbase, like Iwasaki, are misrepresented as a result. This is partially why I began work on this video, to help clear up a lot of this speculation. It's not fair on him, it's not fair on his colleagues, it's not fair on the art they've created, and it's also not fair on the diehard fanbase who know a lot of this stuff is bollocks. I personally believe the reason why Rejet haven't localized any of their stuff into English yet falls back to one simple thing: money. Iwasaki, much like Rejet as a whole, are unsure whether they'll make their money back localizing their Otome games into English. This likely explains why they're focusing primarily on a Chinese-speaking market for localizations instead of the English-speaking one. The Chinese market is much bigger than the West, and it's easier to localize a Japanese title due to the similarities between languages and culture. This is quite a common thing at our publishers, like with the aforementioned Ruby Party. Given Rejet's specific situation, I think they're right to be wary of taking unnecessary risks, which is what an English localization would entail. I think the English-speaking market will grow to a point where Rejet will eventually feel comfortable taking that risk. Even more so if Daisuke Iwasaki can take the reins and work on another title again. After all, if just a few years ago you told the average Otome game fan that Broccoli, Mages and Prototype would start localizing their Otome games, nobody would believe you. A lot can, and will, change in a few years. Moreover, Rejet needs to ensure there's a sizable market that will buy English localizations of their games in the event they're restricted to non-Steam PC stores and the Asian English Switch and Switch 2 import scene. Because yes, Rejet games, like all heterosexual visual novels, are at risk of becoming collateral damage from bans resulting from right-wing authoritarianism primarily targeting pornography and LGBT content. And I wrote this script long before certain recent events. The Rejet fanbase are among the most passionate fanbases across all of video games, let alone visual novels. The power of the internet means Rejet fans worldwide can come together to fangirl about and even translate the games they love. This is why visual novels grew as a medium in the English-speaking world back in the day. Although Otome games followed a slightly different path thanks to Otomate and Sharitz's early interest in the English-speaking market, Rejet's fanbase today is a lot closer to the Bishoujo visual fanbase from the 2000s. Rejet fans rely solely on anime adaptations, fan translations, or learning Japanese to read their games, or stumbling through the games via Google Translate, and oh boy, there are a lot of Rejet fan translations available, so let's just get straight into them. Starting with Diabolik Lovers. The first two Diabolik Lovers titles have full English fan translation patches as of October 2025 for their PlayStation Vita versions, with further patches in the works. There are also full text-based translations for other Diabolik Lovers fan discs already available, which will be ported into the Vita releases. Fun side note, there was a bit of drama regarding the Haunted Dark Bridal patch, where the fan translators tried to gatekeep the patch only to those who own the game, but this was ultimately pointless because the patch got leaked anyway, and that led to a whole bunch of drama which suspended the fan translation scene for Dia Lovers for a few years. I talked about this in a previous video. In terms of other projects, Black Wolves Saga Bloody Nightmare has been widely available in English for some time on both PC and PlayStation Vita. Last Hope has yet to receive a full English patch, but now both titles are coming to the Nintendo Switch, I believe renewed interest will encourage fans to eventually return to the project. Kimi also has an English fan translation patch in the works. This is something that I'm personally really excited for because I think I will really enjoy that game. Moreover, Dot Koreshi, We're 8-Bit Lovers, an episodic isekai fantasy title Rejet released on PC back in 2015, also has full English patches for all 3 volumes. Of all the Otome game developers to not release their titles officially outside of Japan, Rejet is one of 2 developers, the other one being Honeybee, where most of their biggest titles are playable in English in some form, not just in terms of supporting official products and expressing demand, but also stepping in to fan translate. While Rejet has yet to reward the Western fanbase for their support with official localizations, I firmly believe when they do, fans will show up. As of autumn 2025, when I'm finally putting this video together, Rejet recently had their annual stream, which primarily consisted of new drama CD works alongside more Nintendo Switch ports of their games. It's clear that Rejet and their localization partner Hwangne Baishi are committed to re-releasing more classic Otome games on modern hardware, even if they aren't creating any new works. So what about Rejet's main collaborators? I already talked about Daisuke Iwasaki's circumstances earlier in the video, so I'll just focus on everyone else. Rejet's uncertain future on the game development side really shows in that Hirotaka Maida's work only goes up to 2019, both on his blog and elsewhere. While we don't know what he's up to nowadays, I hope he's doing well today. Maida is Rejet's most influential and iconic illustrator, and at this point his Rejet works eclipse everything else he's ever done, including the Deception series. As for Yamada Yumi, she's seemingly become inactive in the visual industry within the last several years. She even has a blog post on her website from August 2022 stating that she's looking for work, and I hope she's managed to find her feet. On a much more positive note, Satoe, the artist who defines Diabolik Lovers with her signature character designs, continues to illustrate Otome games, including popular franchises like Nil Admirari no Tenbin, Olympia Soiree, and Oz Mafia. The latter 2 have upcoming fan discs. The stories with Rejet's other collaborators is broadly similar, so let's just wrap up. Rejet's reputation outside of Asia conceals one of the most interesting and unique legacies within the Japanese gaming industry. Rejet is a developer that both conforms to stereotypes of visual novels while also broadening what to expect within both the genre and games aimed at women more generally. This further built on the genre conventions developers like Ruby Party and Quinn Rose established decades ago. As for their franchises, Diabolik Lovers, Black Wolves Saga, and Kimi have cemented their legacies as household names in Otome game communities around the world, with many of Rejet's other works remaining cult classics or forgotten gems to this day. Even if Rejet never returns to developing brand new games or officially entering the English market, their legacy will live on, just like the Sakimaki brothers. Moreover, Rejet is the ultimate culmination of Daisuke Iwasaki's vision, proudly supported by everyone who helped bring them to life. This is why Rejet deserves your respect, even if you dislike their games, their characters, and their business decisions. Just like the rebellious, misunderstood sibling who keeps to herself. I'm going to end this video by paraphrasing the end of a 2012 blog post written by Daisuke Iwasaki, which despite its age, still sums up the company perfectly in 2025. Since the recession started 4 years ago, thanks to good fortune and other people I'm blessed with, Rejet remains to this day. While Rejet has had various problems, we have a wonderful team. While we are lacking in some areas, we have something important I steadfastly hold, my feeling of wanting to make our fans happy. Smiles, joy and surprise continue to drive me. I've learnt being able to work hard for someone else gives me a greater sense of purpose in life. I want to keep striving for these smiles from now on. That is my unwavering belief.